Customer asked us to look at the pins and bushings on the blade. Yeah. All right, guys, so we're back here. We are working on the 6-way frame for the Dozer blade. We put it in the lathe here, and we use the boring head to make this hole, which is the main pivot point for the blade, cylindrical again. I didn't bother filming it while it's happening. We're at a buddy's shop here, as you can tell from behind me, classic core restoration place. And you know, we took it nice and slow, a couple foul passes as we did it to clean it up. It's not obviously perfect, but that should be good enough for us to get a press fit hardened bearing in there to take up all the slop. And that's the main hole done. We are going to attempt to do something with this hole, but that's a huge win for the night that we got that accomplished. So we'll get things reset up and see what we can do for this plate and go from there. Alright, so since the cylinder rod end broke when I tried to straighten it, I have to torch out a new one. This is 1-inch AR 400 plate. This is typically what you use for cutting edges. So pretty strong stuff, good wear resistance. I'm going to cut out the outer shape of it. We do have to bevel this end so we can weld it back to the cylinder rod. And then I will probably use a mill or something to get the hole in the center back to 1.25 inches. Because I don't really want to test my skills at being able to do a nice perfect circle. So let's get this torched out and see if it sizes up to the original one. Alright. Now obviously that's going to be really freaking hot. And that's going to take some shaping. We're going to have to hit that up with the grinder pretty good, but I do have a plasma cutter, but it does only advertise that on its max setting it can go through 1/2 inch. I also have a buddy that's borrowing it right now, so they have a bigger plasma cutter where he works, and I probably could have cut it out there, but this is Thanksgiving morning, and so obviously that place is, you know, not open. So I'm just trying to see what I can do on my own here. All right, so I hit the piece up with the grinder, and didn't turn out too bad. There's still a few spots that I could probably buff out, but I can buff them out probably pretty easier once they're welded back onto the cylinder rod. So all we gotta do now is chamfer these two ends so it's easier to weld onto the cylinder, and then we gotta get the other rod end off and this one on. right, so we got a root pass on each side. It looks like it's holding pretty good now. I'm gonna let that cool down a little bit. Like I said earlier, I don't wanna distort the temper of this piece too much. So we'll let that cool down a little bit, and then we'll weld some more on it and kind of just build up that weld area, make sure it's attached securely. And then what we can do is we can put this whole cylinder inside of back inside the mill, and probably just plunge cut 1.25 inch end mill through there, or an annular bit, and that'll give us our hole for our pin. Now this is one of the pins. I'm going to weld the top tab back onto it so we can allow our bolt hole to line up. All right. Now I can't go anywhere. We'll fully weld it. And that is a pin, fully welded and ready to go back in the machine. Alright guys, so we're back today. We are continuing the work here on the International 500C Dozer for the pins and bushings. Sorry if it's a little loud. We do have the heater going. It's about 20 degrees in the shop and about 8 degrees outside. We got John here, who offers services in mobile line boring, welding, etc. And he's currently working on removing the old bushing from the main pivot point of the Dozer U-blade frame. And then he's gonna get out the line boring machine, do a little bit of line boring so we can press fit in some brand new bushings into that area and get a new pivot point in and start reassembling some of this. So once he gets all set up, we'll get the camera going. We'll see some line boring. All right, so we got the line boring machine. I shouldn't say we. John has gotten the line boring machine all set up, and we are getting ready to take a cut. Just so you guys can see, we have it going all the way through our bore here, and there is a cutting tip right there. And as this machine rotates, it's also going to thread it down and pull it down through the bore, and then we'll be able to insert brand new said bushing. So it's crazy how it's just, I mean, it's so smooth. It's like acting like it doesn't even.
It's like not caught. It feels like, you know?
Yeah. It acts like nothing's even happening. So once this one's cut to depth, we'll take a finish pass, and then we'll take the cutting edge and we'll move it down here, and we'll cut from the bottom up. Now the bushing on the bottom up is going to be a custom bushing. The one from the top down, we were able to get a stock size bushing. So that is the downfall of working with old equipment like this. everything's worn out and has a lot of slop from lack of grease from over the years. And half the time you can't get away with using a nominal size bushing. You have to make everything custom, but that's why we got the lathe. So we'll get this one finished up and we'll start cutting from the bottom up.
Yeah, this hole's very elongated.
Yeah.
It's only cutting on technically this side right now. It's mainly pushed that way. Past the point of the old one. There's the old one.
Yeah. Alright, so we just took the final pass, got her all cleaned up. We're gonna break some of this down and take a look to see how the bores came out. Like I said, the top bore I'll be able to press fit this bushing in right away. The bottom bore we'll have to take some measurements, get a custom made bushing set up, and get that press fit in so we can start reassembling everything. Alright, so we got our top supports off. We can see we got this bore nice and cleaned up. It's no longer egg-shaped. And we can take our bushing when the time's come and get this in there for a nice press fit. Alright, the old cylinder rod end was broken. So what we did was we cut it off and we made our own rod end out of AR 400 plate that's 1 inch thick. We used a milling machine, put that hole there in the center, welded her back on, and she's ready for reassembly. I know some of you are wondering why I torched that piece off the bottom of the six-way bracket, but just want to show you this hole in the bottom of the bracket was completely wallowed out. The bottom side doesn't look too bad. The top side, it's a giant taper from how bad the pin was that they used. And to try to fix that with a line boring machine, I would have had to get rid of all the bracketing on top of the six-way bracket, including this, because the boring bar has to come all the way through. So instead, I torched that plate off and made a new plate here and a new pin. So we're gonna get this all set up. We're gonna tack weld it. We're gonna double check to make sure that we are square to our piece and that we are in the right position for the Dozer U-blade or U-frame blade. The Dozer U-blade, oh man. The Dozer frame to fit between here and here. So let's get this tack welded up. Top here, I haven't decided. The top's gonna be pretty difficult to properly correct. So I'm going to test fit it and see how much slop we have. We are gonna have a little bit of movement, but compared to what this 1970s machine had before, this is gonna be a huge upgrade. So I think the customer is still gonna be happy with that. He did, you know, preface before I started all this that I didn't need to basically go crazy and turn it back into factory, but when you start doing, you know, new pins and new bushings on certain things and not other things, it seems kind of silly. So up to this point, I have basically taken care of every single thing. So I don't know if I can physically allow myself to not do something to correct that, even if it's, you know, putting some type of shim stock around this or something to make it a little bit tighter of a fit. So all right, let's test fit this. All right. Okay, so I also just remembered that the bottom bushing is not in there yet, so that's gonna give me slop on the bottom. Overall, I think that if I pull it all the way to one side, I should say, I mean, there's still going to be a little bit of slop there, and Very minimal movement. The only thing I forgot to do was put the spacers in. So, gotta take it apart. Beautiful fit. And this thing's going back together. So, this side's all hooked up. The only thing we're gonna have left to do once we get our screws in there and our lines hooked back up, we're gonna weld the plate here and weld the plate on the bottom. Then we can get our dozer blade attached back to our frame here and get our tilt cylinder on. We'll finish putting on the hydraulic hoses, and then we will fill up the hydraulic tank and test this thing out. I will say, for doing all this work and never really tackling a pin and bushings job before, it's coming together pretty nicely. Now the only spot I wasn't able to do was right here, which is pretty unfortunate, but I just didn't have the means of doing it. We couldn't use a boring bar because it has to come all the way up through, and I did not want to cut all this off because this is pretty critical location for the cylinder length. So it's the only hole I couldn't do anything with, but everything else I've taken care of, and there is going to be essentially minimal slop compared to what this thing was like when it came in. Oh, there she is. She's all back together! Woo! Now we gotta put a lot of hydraulic oil in it. All right, so the dozer's completely back together. We just topped off the hydraulic oil. This is a cold start. It is a high of 19 degrees outside today. It is not much warmer in here. The only thing we got going for us is we're protected from the wind. Basically what I'm getting at is it's cold. This is a cold start. That thing idles so nicely. So I'm gonna let it warm up for a couple minutes and then we'll come back, we'll function the hydraulics. Now all the lines and the cylinders in the front are empty right now. So I've topped off the tank. We're gonna cycle it a bunch of times, then we're gonna have to top it off again. And we may even have to top it off while we are cycling it because those cylinders hold a lot more oil than you think. And then the length of all the cables, you know, that adds to the volume of the system as well. So let's let it warm up and we'll be right back. So all the hydraulics are functioning. One thing I did notice, it seems I may have swapped those hydraulic lines for the angle, or I should say for the tilt. It seems like it's going opposite of what you would want it to control. So we'll have to swap those. But the last thing I want to show you guys is the satisfaction of after doing all these brand new pins, bushings, you know, some were standard size, some were custom made on my lathe. I want to show you that there's minimal slop in this blade now, and it is an early 1970s. It's ready to go to work again. So there's just a little bit of rocking top to bottom, and I knew that was going to happen because that very top bushing I could not get to unless I torched off the top of the six-way bracket. So this thing's ready to go to work. Anyway, everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for following around and following me in this journey of this dozer. It has been a long project. The customer didn't really have a timeline, so I kind of worked on it as I could, but I'm glad to say that it's done. It's ready to go back to its owner, and we're ready to bring in the next project. So if you like this, please like it, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button so you get notified every single time I post a video, and we'll see you in the next one.